Welcome back to the new season. Yes, it is the Tilehurst End episode 162. The podcast is back. We're back in all the fun and shapes and everything that you could possibly want. We are determined to provide some fun because, well, as we might be about to discover over the next 90 minutes, this season might be perhaps a little different to the ones we're used to in the past 15 or 20 years at Reading FC. My name is Marc Mayo, your host for the foreseeable future of the season ahead. Let's hope I'm not going to end up like Paul Clement is inevitably going to end up in December and get the sack. But joining me is the democracy to decide who can oust me in the inevitable relegation scrap ahead is Ben Greenwood. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks for having me.
And Westy, how's it going?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, it's nice to have you back. I tell you what, Ben, I didn't really pay attention too much to the kit launch on the day. I was a bit busy, but when it came out, I went on Twitter that evening. I was like, oh, hang on, there's a familiar face enjoying in the kit launch. How was that?
Yeah, good fun, thank you. Just I know people at the club helping out a little bit, so it was nice to get behind the scenes, and they trusted me to not leak it. It wasn't me, I promise. So
yeah, they did. It was maybe like at 5 PM or something, and it came out about 11
yeah,
AM.
it came out a bit early, but it doesn't really matter, does it? It's a good kit in the end, I think. I'm pretty happy with it.
It's blue and white stripes. There's not too much to leak, really, is there?
Yeah, it sorts itself out in that sense, isn't it? Yeah, as a little site update before we crack on then and do the season preview for episode 162. Bunch of new writers got involved with the Tilehurst End over the summer, so thanks for everyone who's emailed in and whatnot, and hopefully we'll be integrating them into the site and you'll see some fresh names on the site and maybe even on the podcast moving forward. There's always space for more, of course, if you want to get in touch on the tilehurstend@gmail.com, and of course any video contributors, anyone who wants to get involved in the YouTube, massively up for that. We've also had the Patreon campaign continuing as per usual. There'll be a link for that on the site of this article and the podcast. Sent out a few free mugs as a bit of a thank you to everyone who's been contributing over the last weeks, months and years and whatnot. And also Podcast Preview is the new name of Podcast Extra. That'll be taking place on Thursdays now as Ollie Allen brings you the opposition fan view, as well as we kind of spruce up that show. And, well, we'll be talking about whether the team has been spruced up in a minute as we go into the pre-season recap.
The Tilehurst End podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans.
So, 3 draws and 3 defeats. It's been an interesting pre-season, I'll give you that, in the terms that the draws have been against Besiktas, Rubin Kazan and Fulham. The defeats against Crystal Palace, Wimbledon and Eastleigh, that footballing giant who I can assure you were in training for several months and weeks before we actually got involved and started training ourselves. So do the results matter? That's the question really for me at this point. Westy, you know, we nicked a late draw against Besiktas. Is that the sign that we're cracking on for promotion this year?
No, clearly not the sign we're cracking on for promotion this year. Although you would say that this year we had some tough opponents. I mean, the ones we drew against are all good sides. We know that. I think more disappointingly was the early results when Eastleigh and Wimbledon seemed to brush us aside quite simply.
Yeah, Wimbledon scored 4, didn't they?
And we had quite a good side out that day. At certain spells, we had a good team. And even if we had sort of semi-reserve team players, you'd expected to push over Eastleigh and got some out of the Wimbledon game. I think the more worrying thing is we're not seem to be scoring again too much against decent opposition anyhow, and we're conceding lots of goals still. I know we've got a 0-0 draw Fulham. Besiktas again is a draw, and Rubin Kazan a draw. We kept a couple of clean sheets, but from what I heard from reports of the friendlies, no one was really playing at full pace, and if they decided they wanted to beat us, I'm pretty sure they could have done on the day. And Besiktas probably should have done it, sort of switched off near the end there.
Yeah, they did completely gift us that the first goal of the 2-2 draw. Ben, in 2011-12, we didn't really start the season particularly well, but in terms of pre-season, we did win 4, lose 1. In the year we got to the playoff final, 16-17, we got 3 wins, a draw, lost 2. Last season, we won 2, drew 3, lost 2. Where do you stand on this in terms of the momentum that we sort of carry through from pre-season? Because we had no momentum at the end of last year, certainly no momentum in pre-season.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? We say, and you can argue both ways. Some seasons they have a great pre-season and don't start well. Other times they have a terrible pre-season and start well. So I'm sure we'll know more after a few games. But it's the performances that's slightly worrying. I was looking at some of the scores, not too bad. Relatively optimistic after the Austria training camp and everything, but then going on Saturday it kind of brought me back down to earth a little bit, I think, and it doesn't seem that as much has changed as I would have hoped.
And I think the worrying thing is as well, especially for that last game at home, it's another home defeat that we've been rather used to over the last 6 months, year.
Yeah, it feels too familiar.
Yeah, we had a strong side out, and again, Palace really easily brushed us aside. They have got some good players, but even so, you'd expect to put up more of a fight in a home match. And I think for the mentality of the side that was losing, and we grabbed a few 1-0s near the end of the season, but we were losing all season. We've gone into a home game against Palace, albeit a friendly, and we got brushed aside quite easily. Is that any good for their morale going into the new season? I think no, it isn't.
Yeah, we were talking, Ben, before we started about how maybe Clement has been using the time to implement new styles, new tactics and whatnot. Against Palace, though, I mean, also kind of over the pre-season in general, looks like we're going 4-3-3. Palace performance sounded like we were pretty decent in midfield. I was at Stag Do, so I wasn't there myself, because that would be a terrible Stag Do, going to a pre-season friendly. And, you know, it's making do and mend with Gunter at left back. Clement doesn't necessarily, if he has changed anything tactically, he's not revealed it so far, has he?
Yeah, maybe it's a great ploy and he's just lured everyone into thinking we're going to be the same again and then we're going to unleash something against Derby. But yeah, it was very... that's why I wanted to go, really, was to see the new players, how they looked and what had changed about the system. But then, you know, we started stroking it around with patience again and not getting out wide quick enough, really, and a little bit shaky at the back still, the holes opening up, and it kind of felt, oh, hang on, this has just picked up exactly where it's left off, rather than, something's changed here, I can see what the difference is going to be. So
I still think they need to toughen up in midfield. I said it last year, there's not anyone there, even though they brought in a guy from Hull. I still don't think there's anyone there that can break play up, and I think if you're playing Swift and you're playing Kelly, and again, I thought Kelly was good on Saturday, and I think he will end up being player of the season if he doesn't get sold before the end of it. But I still think you need someone who can protect them and give them the ball, because I don't think Swift does it, and I don't think Kelly can do it. Long periods, anyway.
Oh, so that is pre-season then. We'll swiftly move on from that and jump into Newsbites, discussing the incomings and outgoings and the transfer activity, which, as we record this on Monday, is certainly not finalised, with about 10 days of the window left as well. Ends the Thursday after we play Derby. And then we'll get onto the mailbag, and that really is going to be the bulk of the show, because there is a lot of opinion going around, and let's face it, it's probably all about the same. So we'll jump in now onto Newsbites.
Reading Newsbites on the Tilehurst End podcast.
I can confirm we have spent some money. Money has been spent on one player in terms of transfer fees this summer. Marc Mayo joins for £1 million. He's got the correct spelling of Mark as well, which is lovely to see. We don't have enough of those going around. A nice alliteration in the name as well. I'm a big fan of signing a player who's done very well for Coventry. Fired them to promotion last season. Bit of an iffy kind of career before that. You know, Scotland, Sheffield United, scored sometimes didn't score. But ultimately, starting with McNulty, I would say that's a kind of positive signing, hopefully a hungry sort of player who can add goals.
With time will tell. It's a big step up from that league to the league he's in. From what I've seen of him, he looks a bit like Curitin or Lafondra type player, sort of fox in the box type player. If he gets supply, he might score goals in this division, but as we know from last season, we struggled to give strikers supply. So can he create? Can he be good on the ball and be a threat in this league? Time will tell. I'm erring on the side of caution. I think we've bought League 2 strikers before, and they've even stronger players than him, and they've struggled to make a big impact in the Championship. It is a massive step up. Anyone who thinks it isn't is deluded, and he will not come up against centre-backs in League 2 that he will come up against in the Championship, and he's unproven. So if you're buying him as part of like your fourth striker, someone who can grab a goal last 20 minutes or so, then you think it's a good signing. If you haven't got a recognised striker, which we haven't as we do this programme, who's going to score goals, then if you're relying on him, I think we're in trouble.
Man's going to need time, isn't he, Ben?
Yeah, definitely needs time. You're right, you hit the nail on the head there, that it's a big step up. And, you know, by definition, a fox in the box type player needs the ball in the box and someone whipping it in and being there to tuck things away. And we just, you know, we don't create many chances, so he needs to be super clinical if he's going to, win people over.
Sorry, Ben. I think the problem is if you're going to play that sort of player without someone who can, like your Kermagans or even your Bodvarsson to a certain extent, who can win a header, can use knockdowns for him, he's not going to be able to play with a Luku and Barrow on either wing. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a pointless exercise. I think he'll struggle against two centre-backs. So if you're going to play two up front, maybe it might work. I say the jury's out on him. Can he make the step up? He's 25, 26 now, so it's a good time for him to do it. But if he can't, Is £1 million a risk nowadays? Probably not.
Well, it's a risk if he's the only striker we sign. If we do go out and it's Sam Baldock is the one that's been talked about. I mean, it's supposedly had a medical on Monday is the latest on that as we're recording this. And if we can add again, Baldock is a kind of fox in the box striker. He is not a target man or necessarily that pacey. We're signing players who have gotten goals at this level, which is great, but do we actually play the way that they need us to play? And McNulty, I think he's, as I say, he's going to need time. And if he is off the bench, as it looks like in pre-season, he didn't really start that many games. So I think he probably will be relied upon off the bench. Maybe Bodvarsson will get in a start for Derby if he's fit enough after his extended World Cup break. Looking back, going to the midfield then, it was Milo who brought in. You kind of alluded to him earlier. Yeah. I think this is a good signing in the sense that we do need someone, as you say, to break up the midfield. Probably the most physical member of the midfield we got now.
Well, he is, yeah. And again, he's steady at this level. We know he's decent enough to step into the Championship level. So you'd have to say that's an improvement. And going back to McNulty, I know, but if you're buying £1 million players, you have to be able to put them in a side, and they should be starting. If you're buying players, I think you should always make sure they're starting, because why are you buying players for otherwise? You want to improve the team, which will automatically improve the squad, not buy players to sit on the bench. I always think that's disappointing.
Well, I suppose we haven't bought John O'Shea, but he's going to come in and I kind of hope he's sitting on the bench, because he's not the type of player that I would want to be putting straight in against Derby with Vidra, yada yada yada, and what's the point of signing him, Ben?
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I think you've got to base it on experience, haven't you? And he's there for more than just, he's not a week in, week out player. I would hope.
Learning to do his coaching bits as well, isn't he?
I think that's been the general idea, and the thoughts coming out of the club is that he can play games here and there, but he's more here for the mentality. But in a sense, that's kind of worrying too, because he's been at Sunderland.
This is exactly what I was going to say.
Winning mentality.
If you're bringing players in that you want to change the philosophy or the mindset of the players we've had in the side so far, the players that they've brought in are hardly going to do that, are they? I mean, you've got a right back that's been relegated, you've got a centre back that's been relegated twice as captain. Mayo been dropped out of the Premier League, struggled in the Championship. And your players coming from League Two, that scares me more than anything, really.
Well, also we're not spending any. Yadom came in, and Sam Walker again. If you thought we needed a third goalkeeper, you have the answer that we've got one now, so it doesn't matter. There is a sense that apparently Yarkola might be injured or something like that, and that's kind of why we brought him in. But 3 transfers and a £1 million man, it doesn't a winning team in any level make at this stage of the season, does it?
No, and especially the way we finished. And when we finished with a side that was getting beat regularly all season, probably lucky to survive on the points they got. And they've brought in players that, well, we've brought a couple of players to sit on the bench in O'Shea and, like I just alluded to before, McNulty. 2 players to sit on the bench. Now, I don't get it. I think really if you're buying players, bring them in to start and improve the side, not just carry on as before.
Yeah, the difficulty is we don't know whether they are trying to get those players, and the attraction's just not there to come now. If you see what I mean? I can't.
Or the money.
The money and the attraction. Like, what's inspiring about coming to Reading now? It's difficult to see why players might choose us over other Championship clubs who have good chance of being promoted or being in with a shout.
I think money talks in general, though. If you're going to spend, people come.
If we're not spending, and if we are, Yadom is obviously Gunter's sort of competitor for right back. I suppose we kind of needed that. O'Shea, whatever backroom plans they have for that. But if we're going to stock the squad, I would rather we do that from the academy rather than spending whatever wages and signing on fees, etc., to bring in 38-year-old centre-backs. And it doesn't seem like the academy is being brought on and relied through this summer for the season ahead.
It's worrying, I think. I think, again, O'Shea at 38, I think he played like 40-odd games last year, so he did play virtually every week. But at his age, one knock, we've seen it with Kermit and other players we've had down the years, your Keowns and Ferdinands, one knock and they're out for 3 months. And I think also we've got a problem with McShane. I think he will hardly play a game again this year. I think he'll be in and out the side. So you lose his experience. And then who have you got left? Moore's supposed to be leaving. We'll talk about it later on, I know, but he's supposed to be leaving. You've got Alori, who's really inexperienced at this division, in this division, and makes a lot of mistakes, let's face it. Yeah. So who's playing centre-back? That's another concern for me that's not been addressed already, and the season starts in a couple of days.
Maybe Gunter.
Yeah, it genuinely wouldn't be a surprise, would it, at this stage? Let's brush over the outs then. It seems like a lot of Deadwood's gone. Rackles has gone back to Latvia. Weiss has gone to Vaduz. Mendes back to France. Tenno Watson's gone out on loan to Wimbledon. Van den Berg's come back to Holland. Andrija Novakovic, the striker who did rather well in the Dutch second division last year, he's gone back on loan to Holland in the first tier with their Fortuna Sittard. Kermorgant's gone. Quinn has gone. Bond has gone to West Brom, I suppose, as a backup. Yeah, as I say, a lot of Deadwood gone there, but Kermorgant of a bit of a weird one, how he kind of looks like he was staying, then halfway through the summer just left as a mutually terminated contract. Is there anyone out of there, Westy, that you're sad to see go or would have rather kept?
No. Again, off air, we spoke about Kermorgant. I thought it was a strange one to give him a year's extended contract when he was injured. And I think if we go back to the start of last year, I said people were saying, oh, well, they come back fit and score 20 goals again.
Yeah,
I said that's not going to happen. I said you'd be lucky to see him fit for Christmas, and that's pretty much how it turned out. But it's a shame because, like I said, I still think he's got something to offer. Looking at the other players that we have up front, I'm still saying he could win a ball in the air, he could win a knockdown, he could do 20 minutes. And if you're buying strikers for £1 million that you expect him to do 20 minutes, you may as well get the one we had here. Unless, of course, his injury was still giving him problems and there was no point in him staying here for the season to sit on the treatment room. He probably wanted to get away as much as we wanted to get rid of him.
Yeah, potentially. You don't see anyone on that list who's going to come back and bite us. Jonathan Bond had a really good loan spell at Peterborough, and we've signed a new goalkeeper for free, having let one go for free. What's the difference between Sam Walker and Jonathan Bond?
Well, yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I don't know much about Walker, to be honest. I think Bond was a bit unlucky here, really. He made a couple of mistakes and he never really recovered.
He only had one very short spell in the team.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a reputation and he did well out of Peterborough, and I'm sure he just wanted to get away from the club, really. So that one doesn't bother me too much. Shame to see Weiser go. I was waiting for him to come in and be brilliant there.
That was almost inevitable at large stages of last season, wasn't it?
But other than that, no, it doesn't. None of them too disappointing. Like you say, Deadwood really, I think, needed to thin the squad out, but it's maybe looking a bit ropey now. So
there's one thing I will say. I read up about Walker, the goalkeeper, and he's a big lad, 6'6" or something. So he's a proper sized goalkeeper. And I always like to read the other fans' opinions on players when they leave.
Yeah.
They know, don't they?
Yeah,
they know what they're talking about in general. And all of them, for what I read, was sad to see him go, which would suggest that he's a good goalkeeper. And I think he made 200-300 appearances for them. So he's experienced in that division. And for what he said, that he wanted to sort of make the next step up and go back to being sort of a high level, because obviously dropping down from Chelsea. So I think, do you know what? I'd be surprised if he wasn't the first choice before the end of the season. I'm not a big fan of Mannoni's anyway. I think he makes too many mistakes. I think he punches when he should catch. I don't like him. So it wouldn't be a shock to me from a player that Clement knows very well if he was first choice goalkeeper before too long.
Yeah, Walker came through at Chelsea, so probably I think we've nailed on that he coincided with Clement at some point down at there. So yeah, it's a case of kind of turning over. What the last thing I'd say about the whole Deadwood and Bond and everyone moving through is that it's kind of it's a sad indictment of the players that we were signing 2-3 years ago, that they're now all leaving and we're all just happy to see them go and they never really made any impact. That's the last thing I'd say on that. You think about how many first team appearances Rackles, Mendes, Weiser, Bond really got, even Stephen Quinn as well.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near as many as they should have.
It's a shame for Quinny because I thought he's a good footballer. It's just obviously his injuries have caught up with him. And I think he maybe, if he can get himself fit, he'll come back and play at a decent level again.
He's been very unlucky. I think he would have done well in our team, to be honest. He worked really hard and tough, and he suited it, and you needed that mentality at times last season, definitely, but he just so unlucky with injuries.
Yeah, well, the elephant in the room as we're talking is Liam Moore, who I'll probably check Twitter and he's probably gone as we take the break and jump into the mailbag, and I can promise there were some fans getting in touch about his situation.
Get social with the boys.
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.
Right, I've just checked Twitter. Liam Moore has not left this football team. If you're listening to this, Liam Moore has probably left Reading. So the usefulness of this coming up chat is going to be based on the fact that Liam Moore has probably left. And on the mailbag, we'll start with Daniel Roy Mackay, who asks, do you think Liam Moore handed his transfer request in because of the lack of transfer activity we've been involved in after last season's shortcomings? Right, my position on the whole Moore thing is he's put in a transfer request far too late in the day. It was about a week before the season started that it apparently came through, and the Brighton interest and everything like that started like the end of June. So a significant amount of time has passed between, the first instance and the latest news. If in that time period Liam Moore has been made promises that Reading are going to sign players for loads of money and he believed it, then he's stupid. Because that was never, ever going to happen. And I don't even believe the club would have told him that. If he's only just decided now that he really wants to force a move to Brighton, then he's done it far too late. Because the end of June, £10 million, transfer request, definitely want to go. Kind of everyone agrees and accepts that that's what happens and it's football, etc., etc. Not too bad a thing. But it's just so late in the day now. And we're in a situation where we're playing Derby on Friday with one very old centre-back, one kind of old centre-back, and one slightly dodgy centre-back, and nothing else really. And, I mean, it's just a bit of a shame that we kind of have a lot going against us already, and this is just one more thing, Westy.
Yeah, it'd be a shame to see him go. Do I blame him? No, not for in the slightest second. Do I ever sit there thinking, what you've done is wrong, Mr.
How
Moore?
dare you leave Reading for Brighton in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think he's been great for us. I think he's resurrected his career at us, so we've helped each other really. But if I was Liam Moore, with the ability he's got, I wouldn't want to play for Reading either, because I think all it's going to do is drag his career down. I think in actual fact, I thought his first, as the season went on, he started to get dragged into poor positioning and making mistakes, and then he sort of resurrected that back end of the season when we swapped managers. But I think for him, I think I'd never blame a player for wanting to leave if they've given us all they've got, and I think they've given us all I've got, and I think he's thinking to himself now, this is a team that could potentially be relegated into League One. Where does that leave my career? And if you look at it that way, I don't think you can blame him. I don't think anyone can blame him for wanting to leave, because like you said, if we'd have bought 4 or 5 players and thought, hang on, these are some good players we brought in here, we've got a good squad, we've got a good opportunity to go back up, I'm sure he would have stayed.
Yeah.
But if I was him and Brighton come knocking on my door and said, look, we're going to give him 8 million or 10 million for you to come play in the Premier League potentially, I'd say see you later, bye-bye.
Rewind to the start of the month then, Ben, and £10 million gets landed at Reading's desk for Liam Moore. Why didn't we take it, and would you have taken it?
It's so hard to work out what a player's worth in the current market, because there's some crazy figures. But to me, that sounds good money. If he's going to go, I think you take it. I agree with you, Westy. You don't begrudge him going to a better team, but it is definitely the timing that's the frustrating thing here, because it seemed to have passed over, and we were quite pleased to be keeping him, and it would have been a good boost for the mentality of the squad to keep that good player, and he's very popular, and now it's kind of throwing a cat amongst the pigeons again and blowing everything out for the start of the season. I think Reading were prepared to pay hardball and get more money for him, maybe get Sam Bulldog as well as like part of the deal, whatever they've done, and I think Moore probably sat back and just let the club get on with it, and when it looked like Brighton weren't going to come back with a bigger offer, I think then Moore's gone, no, I want to leave now.
Yeah, it's confirmed that is his intention. And I think the thing is, transfer request is kind of taboo in football, isn't it, that you've handed in this transfer request? But I mean, in reality, it's an ugly phrase in a sense, because there must be so many different variants and so many different ways a player can hand in a transfer request, so many different things that have gone before that we don't know about. But when it is looked upon as fans as like one of the most evil things a player can do, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But again, you can't really blame. I think Ron Gourlay, for example, when he's come in, all the players that are assets to us, he's given big contracts to ensure that we get big money for them when they move, or if they decide to move. And I think that's good business. But I think Reading have tried to pay hardball here, and I think the players just got fed up and thought, well, I want to leave, so you better take 8 million or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, as I say, there's not too long at all until the transfer window ends. Obviously, it's after the Derby game. It's just before the Premier League season starts, so we will have a few days to panic by once we're beating 5-0 at Amadeski in front of the Sky Cameras on Friday night. So that will be that's a saving grace to an extent. Let's talk transfers generally then, as Jack Killick emails in. He says, welcome back, lads. I'm really struggling to find any positives after the weekend in terms of on and off the pitch. Have to perform better on Friday. What are your thoughts on Baldock? I'm really not convinced. He's not exactly been prolific at past clubs, and I was hoping for someone else, e.g. Jack Marriott, who went to Derby. I just don't get how Derby can keep buying when they were supposed to be in trouble with FFP. Reading keep claiming they can't spend because of financial fair play. Is this true, or do they just not have the funds? I'll throw in another couple, because we've got a lot of questions. I'll throw in another couple of questions on that sort of theme. Ray Paul says, who's out there worth of worth that we could afford before the deadline. Sam Richard says, what are your thoughts on why the club is showing such little ambition in the market? Has Clement been given false promises and we seem to be a club losing the fan base instead of growing it? And lastly, Guy J says, just wondering how much financial fair play is affecting our ability to spend. After last season, spending and attendance is not great. Can't be much money left. So, where is the money?
Well, again, if you're Clement and you know you've got no money to spend in the transfer market, hence the fact we haven't spent any hardly, you'd have thought they'd have probably got the Moore deal sorted out pretty quickly. Got their 8 million in, knew they had at least 6 or 7 to spend, because that's obviously what he's been told. If you spend, you can probably have the money, and if you haven't, there's nothing to spend. We don't know how much that Sam Baldock's going to cost us at the moment, but even so, it seems strange to me that they haven't let him go. He knows he's not been able to improve the squad with anyone who's coming in and being a regular starter. So it's strange. I don't understand it. And when it comes to financial fair play, I'm not quite sure of how the rules work. But Derby do have a big fan base and do fill their ground most weeks.
Yeah, and you can imagine they make double the amount of gate money that we do.
Easily, but they do have a big squad and they do spend a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But on the flip side, when they sell players, normally they sell for a lot of money as well. So I don't know exactly how it works, but...
They've still got Alex Pearce on the wages that they paid him when they signed him from us, haven't they?
Yeah.
So it's that sort of...
And Blackman's still there as well, as far as I know. And
yeah, I think he's on loan somewhere.
He's on loan in Turkey or somewhere, wasn't he? But yeah, again, they have a massive squad, Derby, but they always managed to blow it near the end anyway. So it doesn't always show that spending a lot of money makes a great deal of difference.
This is very true. I think, I mean, do you get the sense, Ben, that we have basically no money left? There's not recently, certainly over the summer, there's not been talks of or like administration or winding up orders, that sort of stuff. We have had that over the past 5 years at various points. So is this the club actually being in trouble, or is this rather the club saying we haven't got that much money, we're not in trouble, but we would be in trouble if we did go out and spend £10 million?
Yeah, at the moment it seems cautious, doesn't it? It seems like they're not throwing money at it, but at the same time it's too cautious from my point of view. I don't think there's no money, because I believe they probably would have come out and said that, at least Clement would. He seems quite frank in his interviews before, and he said he's targeting striker and things like that and bringing players in on loan. But it's a bizarre situation to get to with a week left, and we're only talking about 1 million being spent. So something's not quite right behind the scenes there.
Definitely.
Do you think there's players out there, any players that you know about? Ray Paul says, is there anyone worth the value that we can grab for the deadline? I think it's been a bit of a weird transfer window because of the early deadline. A lot of Premier League teams in particular are kind of waiting, and especially with players come back from the World Cup. Do you think there's a good chance that some new names are possibly going to emerge for us to pick up?
I think that they're more likely to get a young up-and-comer on loan from the Premier League or one of the top European leagues. Like I say, Clement's he should know a lot of players. He's been around the world coaching, so you'd have thought he'd have a base of players that you think, actually, we can go here and get them. I'm hoping that's the plan. A bit like Wolves last year, who got a lot of loan players and then got promoted. It's definitely something that works. We've seen it work last year. I mean, to be fair, the players they had were out of this world when it comes to championship level. If they're going to do something like that, we'll see. If they're going to spend on wages rather than paying big prices for players, I don't think anyone will mind, as long as it pushes them up the league. I don't know if there's anyone who sat on someone's bench that could come and do a job for us. We've had players on loan before, especially last year, who come in and done very little for us, who come with a big reputation in this division. So I'm not always sure that a loan player who has been round the block is worth having, but definitely a young player who is coming out of the Premier League, who's going to the Championship to improve herself. I think that would probably be where I would go if I was Clement.
Yeah, it makes sense. We spoke about Baldock and the whole finishing and everything and creating chances aspect earlier. Lise Winnard says, do you think playing Aluka and Barrow are at the heart of our problems? Neither do their defensive duties well and leave our fullbacks constantly exposed. In the playoff year, both McCleary and Behrens worked much harder defensively. Aluka and Barrow, I mean, Barrow, you'd almost rather play him centrally as a 4-4-2 striker with his kind of pacey game. Obviously, he's going to drift out wide from there, but he doesn't necessarily suit the 4-3-3 because him and Aluko are such different wingers. They kind of, it's a imbalance, isn't it? One's trying to drift inside, one's trying to go wide, one wants to score goals, one wants to shoot from distance. It's not necessarily, and compared to McCleary and Behrens, would you say that we've kind of downgraded in a sense, Ben?
It's difficult. I don't know about downgraded. I think Barrow's a good player and a scary player for defenders to come up against purely because of his pace, and he's got that kind of spark. He sort of seems to be the only one really in the team at the moment that can have that Kebe effect of like getting the crowd up and making a run and taking someone on, and then Aluko is kind of almost the opposite, isn't it? It's very frustrating. He seems like he's going to beat people and put in a good ball, but he just doesn't do it enough and comes back and drifts all over the place. And I think they definitely struggle playing both of them. They just haven't got that balance right of whether they're wingers or whether they're not.
Whether they're kind of like inside strikers in a sense, isn't it? Joby McAnuff was kind of very underrated for his defensive work, and that was massively key to the sign of McDermott era. Neither of these players really do track back to such extent, do they?
I mean, McAnuff and McCleary. I mean, McCleary, when he's fit, sometimes is unplayable. And when he used to team up with Gunther, especially when they first came in together, they were very good together. They worked well as a team. And Behrens, again, his first season with us, I would say he was 6.5 out of 10 most games. He was steady Eddie, really. Not really pulling up any trees. Aluko and Barrow, they have the potential to both be good players in this division. Barrow, for example, like you said earlier, is our only threat, especially on the break. I said it before, I don't know why Reading don't play that sort of football anyway on the break football, because it would work better for them, I think, with the players they have. Barrow, being a winger, sometimes his performances are inconsistent, but he is a threat. Aluko, I think he let himself down badly last year, and I think if you can get him to get somewhere near the form he showed for Fulham at times, I think you've potentially got two really good wingers. Do they defend well? If you're playing three in midfield, no, they don't necessarily need to play that well and track back. You just need to shuffle your players across.
But two of those three midfielders, John Swift and Liam Kelly, and
that's what I'm saying. They're not got the protection they needed last year for definite. So that's what I say. I think our main, and this could sound stupid, but I think some of our major problems are in midfield. Although we do have good players there, I don't think they're good for the system we try and play, because you haven't got anyone like Ledgerwood who will break the play up, and you haven't got players. Kelly gets around the pitch, don't get me wrong, I think he's a very good player. Swift, I think, is very, very overrated at times. I think he doesn't put in the work that we need him to, and even on the ball in the back end of the season, I thought he was poor. Give it away a hell of a lot. I think he's weak in the tackle, and I think if he's having a bad day, playing free in there, I think it really affects our side. You want to be able to let Aluko and Barrow to a certain extent be free or threer, but they don't seem to be able to be, because we don't get out enough, and that's forcing them to defend, which is not natural to them, and then it exposes our weaknesses in the defence, which were quite clear from last year.
Yeah, Daniel Roy Mackay asks, what's the last season you can recall where there has been so much negativity before a ball has been kicked? I'm struggling to remember one as bad as this. Dave Hambags-Harris, of someone of this podcast, replied to that on Twitter saying 99-2000, an utter mess ending to the year before. Typical Burns quantity over quality recruitment, not so much with Nicky Forster in the summer. Lo and behold, an appalling first half of the season which looked like heading towards relegation under Pardew and Gorman. Westy, what were your memories of that pre-season, how it sort of compares, the vibe around the club compares to now?
Yeah, as he's talking about the year that we bought sort of 7 players in as well, I thought there was a massive vibe around the club that year in a positive sense, I remember. But again, it proved to be false dawn. False. So sometimes, being a fan for many years now, I don't get too carried away either way, because I've known times when I thought, hey, this looks like it's going to be a great season, and then we've been beat 4-1, 4-0 in the first 2 games of the season. So yeah, I'd have to agree with him there. There is a negative tinge. It's just carried through, really. It hasn't changed anything, has it? The signings haven't made anyone think either way that we're going to be any better, and that is a shame, I think.
Yeah, I think you said just before we started recording, Ben, about the World Cup, and I think because that obviously consumed everyone's sort of focus and so much, it was as the World Cup ended, you need a break from football each summer, and obviously we didn't get it with the World Cup, and people have been using now as their break from football, and you come back to Reading, you think, actually, it's like when you've come back from holiday and you've got to go back to work on Monday. It's like, I don't really want to be there as much, and that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting a lot at the moment.
Yeah, I was saying I really wished that I didn't go to the Palace game now, because the World Cup got me excited for football, really enjoyed it, had a little break, and then, Reading did a few things, but I was they were on the back burner for me, and I was thinking, as I do at the start of every season, you know what, I fancy us with an outside chance of the playoffs here, we could be good this year. And then seeing that game and not a lot changing, as we said, it has kind of I'm eternally optimistic, and it's made me doubt myself a little bit here. And it catapulted, didn't it? It's snowballed after the Liam Moore transfer request just added to that, and we're not typically the most positive fan base, and I think it's just all come flooding out. And I'd cautious to try and not get carried away, like you say. We've had it before where we've had bad seasons, and I'd rather see 10 games in, let's check back in then and see how we're feeling, rather than getting carried away now with it's all doom and gloom.
I think the great thing about the World Cup is it's skating over a poor pre-season, because no one was really no one was interested.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine at work, he said to me, he says, what I fear, he said, is if England were to win the World Cup, how can I go and watch Reading next season? And I was struggling to disagree with him.
Yeah, I mean, we'll end on this section on a gaggle of questions on pretty much the same point. Robert Stevens says, I'm inclined to keep my nerve at the moment. When should I start to panic? Then when do I resign myself to the seemingly inevitable? I think that sort of 10-game barrier is kind of a good marker for that one, isn't it? Andy Povey says, last season Reading were as poor as any team I can remember. There will have been teams relegated with record low points who offered more going forward than we did. Was so relieved when we somehow stayed up. I've seen nothing to suggest the season will be any better, but having said that, I will still be down Friday in every other home game this season. Ryan Jeffrey says, is relegation almost certain, or will Baldock be our saving grace and take us to the playoffs? Matthew Everson says, why does it feel like we're in a never-ending downward spiral? And the Belfast Biscuit says, tell me what's changed since Clement has been in position. I'm desperately looking for positives in a sea of negativity at the moment. Let's find those positives. Should I stop recording for 20 minutes and we'll go make some notes?
Write some stuff down.
I think the positive to me is that we are still in the Championship. We're not going into the Premier League season where 8 teams you can guarantee are going to thump you 16 times a season. We are playing some relatively mediocre teams who will play some poor performances against us. And in the Championship, it being as unpredictable as it is, you're always in with a shout of not necessarily the playoffs, but at least having a good run of 8 wins in a row or 5 wins in a row, etc., etc. Is that correct? It feels like the silence says that's not correct.
No, I think there are 8 teams in this league that might give us a few fun bits, to be fair. Again, it's going to be a strong league. We know the Championship is strong most seasons. Like you said, teams are inconsistent, but the teams that were down there with us, like your Leeds and your Forest, from what I've seen, they've spent a lot of money recently. That's a concern. I think the teams coming down from the Premier League, they look stronger than they did last year. Yeah, and the teams that come down the year before were there or thereabouts, and I think that you struggle to move them this year. So I think Reading are moving themselves further and further down the pecking order from 2 years ago, where we was all shocked to see them finish third. But we had a good core of a side, they had a good team ethic, they worked hard together. We got figured out. Now, you're looking at probably, I'd have to say off the top of my head, I could probably reel off 12 to 14 teams that I think will finish above Reading next year. And that is what I'm concerned about. And that's a minimum 12 to 13 teams, or 14 teams.
This is supposed to be the optimistic section.
There's 8 teams that are worse than us.
Exactly, listen.
Okay.
From fourth and bottom, anything above that is probably a positive thing.
No, it would be a definition improvement. But where do you find your positives at this? Is it simply the case that anything can happen in football, or are there actually things in this team that we can hold on to and say that is good?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I'm of the opinion that we can't judge Clement yet. I don't think.
No.
It's been.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
After the Stam era, he did a rescue job, really, didn't he? Just keep us up. We still had some terrible games. That 4-0 at the end was pretty awful, but he did job number 1. I'm not going to judge him over pre-season, as we've said before. We've had some bad pre-seasons, we've had some good pre-seasons, and it's not really affected what's happened in the season. I will judge him a few games in once I see how we're playing. I can't believe that this team will have the same attitude of we're too good to be in trouble. It will come good eventually. I think last season, too often it felt like the players thought we're good players and eventually it will just go right, and they didn't make that happen. I think on Friday they're going to have to grab the bull by the horns and go at it and try and win that game rather than just expecting to come good.
I think it's a good game to start with, really. You're on telly, you'll be the first ones out, you're first out of the blocks. it's all going to be about Lampard and Derby.
Totally. Yeah.
We're just there to spoil the party, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I think if you can get something out of that game, then Derby will be there or thereabouts they are every season. I think that will give them a bit of a push then. Think, actually, come on, we can do this. We can take on sides like this. And playing the top teams in the first start of the season is the best time to play them, because obviously fitness has a major impact of how well you start your season.
Of course.
If we want to look for positives, I'll say there's more to come from some of them players. I mean, I think there's more to come from Kelly. I thought he was really good last year. And in fact, when we was in trouble, I thought from such a young player, young head, I thought he was excellent getting us out of that relegation fight. I think there's other players there. I think there's more to come from Barrow. There's certainly more to come from Maluku. And if they can change their form, I think them three, Fort, Swift as well, if they can change their form a bit, I think that could have a good positive effect on that side. Last year, I think they let themselves down. Hopefully this year they won't.
The other thing about Derby is Paul Clement used to manage them, and
it's a bit of motivation for them.
Yeah, there's always this thing of people coming back to haunt you, isn't there? So fingers crossed he can do it to them.
Yeah, well, let's round off this season preview podcast then with a little look at the Derby game. As I say, the new format for the midweek or later week show with Ollie will be a full-on preview for it, but we'll have a little look at it now and give a prediction for that and a prediction for the season as well.
The Tilehurst End podcast.
Any other business?
Right, gamble aware with this, and I know in terms of gamble aware, a lot of people have been putting a bit of cash on Reading getting relegated, so I'm not going to share the odds on that. But as it turns out, for Friday night, we are not the favourites to beat Derby. They're 7-5, draw 11-5, Reading 21-10, with your various bookies, #gamble aware. And we said it's a good time to play them. I kind of fear with this one that they will be on their kind of upward hype with Lampard, etc., etc. Feel like it's their time. With new managers, I felt this with Roy Keane a lot when he was Sunderland manager, can manage that so easily when they're on good form and everything's going well. When things go badly, then it's very, very hard for new managers to sort of regenerate momentum. And as we're playing them at the start of the season, that's not necessarily going to be the case. They could well come in on such great confidence against us.
They could, but you just hope that Reading are aware that they're going to start quickly and try and get an early goal as fast as they possibly can. But you hope that Reading get in their faces and causing problems themselves. You know, it depends what mentality you're going to turn up with. You'd hope that Reading turn up with, let's prove something here. We have had a poor pre-season, but we've played some good sides. Let's hope they've got that in their head. Rather than we've had a poor pre-season, we look like we're going to get beat at home again. Derby has just come here to roll us over.
And if we do think that, we will get beat.
Yeah, of course we will. And just hope that Reading don't think that, and we can get a win under our belt nice and early, and we can change the whole mentality of everybody, including us sat here complaining about it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, you got here that Derby been going pretty well in pre-season, beat Wolves 2-1 and Saints 3-0.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that. It makes me think they're going to underestimate us. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that they're thinking, look how awful Reading are, look how great we are. And we know when we're on the other side of that, and I'm thinking how brilliant Reading are, it always
we often get beat, don't we?
Yeah. So I'm optimistic that they might take us for granted.
And I think Derby see us as a bit of a bogey team. We do seem to get some good results against them down the years, one way or another. So hopefully that continues.
Yeah, are we going to play Yaku Mate up front? He started against Palace.
Yeah.
I'd imagine Bodvarsson might not be quite ready, as we said earlier, just come back from the World Cup and whatnot. If Baldock is signed, I doubt he'd necessarily start. It doesn't look like he'd start McNulty, but Mate isn't really... He's a bit of a wild card, I suppose, in a large respect, but not someone that I'd start in this game.
Yeah, you sort of need him to have that Joseph Mendes Villa game, don't you, where he's unexpected and just does something amazing.
Yeah.
I think he worked hard against Palace. They were pressing and he was leading that, but he looked very frustrated that no one else was really pressing with him, and he just didn't get a sniff at all in that game, to be honest. So I was actually, when Bodvarsson and McNulty came on, they linked up relatively well, big man, little man, and had a few touches. I think they sort of had a word with each other saying, look, we could stake a claim for being a partnership here. And although obviously we were 4-0 down and it wasn't the best of games, there was flashes of something there. So I wouldn't mind seeing two up front, to be honest, and them two playing together.
Yeah, it seems like Derby, according to their last pre-season game, probably going to play a 4-3-3 with Harry Wilson, Dave Nugent and Tom Lawrence as their strikers. They've got the similar sort of team as last year, Derby. They haven't really signed that many players that I've noticed anyway. And we had Gunter at left back against Palace. Do we expect Richards or Blackett suspended? We've also got Dave Edwards is out injured. Are we expecting Omar Richards to get the call, or is Clement going to kind of err on the side of caution with that one?
I think he'll err on the side of caution, but I genuinely think he's brought Gunter to left back, but I genuinely think he probably want him out of the side. I think he's seen enough of him last year to think you need replacing. He kept pointing at the fact that there wasn't enough competition in his position, and if you see by pre-seasons, Gunter's played left back pretty much all the way through it. So I think Gunter is going to get the heave-ho if he gets the opportunity. So we'll see. I think this week he'll definitely play left back, and maybe give him enough opportunity to hang himself. But I don't think Clement fancies Gunter that much.
No, it doesn't seem so. Prediction time then. Luckily, on the opening podcast of the season, we're esteemed to have the previous season's Prediction League winner for company to tell us exactly how this game is going to go.
I think I said to you, I think I've been doing this show for 10 years now, and I think that's the first time I've won the Prediction League. Only because I stopped gambling, well, not gambling, giving predictions with my heart and started using my head. So I better stick to that philosophy this year as well. So I'll go for, I don't think we'll score. I think they'll beat us 2-0.
I'm going to go 1-1 because I think opening night of the Championship, the nerves that Derby and whatnot can have, especially if we get a lucky goal, and I think they'll score. But I
think they'll definitely score.
Yeah, I think I do just see all the hype and everything Championship games do, they can fizzle out. And I think this is possibly one that will fizzle out, particularly last half hour. If it's 1-1, both teams might just say, that's all right, we'll have that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with my heart and 2-1 Reading.
Well done, Ben.
Yeah, it's important for this podcast that we don't all just jump out. Then okay, good. We'll get the rest of the predictions for the Prediction League and whatnot as we go towards Friday, and season prediction then to end on. Where are we laying our cards down for the start of the season? Are we saying official relegation campaign, or are we saying just surviving, or surprise run to the playoffs?
Let's put it this way. I think Rotherham will go down.
Mm-hmm.
The other two that have come up,
Wigan and Blackburn
look strong. I can't see them getting relegated. I can't even bring myself to say Reading will get relegated. So I'm going to say they finish fifth from bottom. Based on what I've got now.
I think QPR are really dodgy as well. They'd spend 40 million quid on just because they spent too much money, and now they've got Steve McLaren in charge. I think and I agree on Rotherham, I think they're worse than us, and I think a team like Millwall or Sheffield United could surprise and have a terrible season.
Bolton, I think, will struggle.
Yeah, they've got terrible problems as well, Bolton, I think.
Ipswich.
They've got a new manager, I think he's decent.
I still think Ipswich is sort of good enough to be mid-table.
Yeah, and I'm going to go for another case just like last season and the seasons before, actually, of us being about 19th with 3 games to go, needing to lose all of them, and then we'll get a draw or something. I think we'll stay up, but it won't be known until the last couple of weeks.
Do you know what's funny about what we just said there? I said fifth from bottom, and we only managed to name 2 teams that we thought were worse than us.
All right.
2 teams will get into a liquidation.
that we agreed on that was definitely worse than them.
I'm going to go 10th.
Ooh, I'll take 10th.
Well,
yes.
I feel right, Ben, I really do.
Yeah, I mean, it is a case of, obviously, if anyone listens to this thinks, they're just negative. It is genuinely a case of, I think it's with the club as well and the whole fan base. When you've had one bad season, you think, right, let's brush ourselves down and get onto it. We've had one good season in about 4 or 5 now.
It's been a long time, really.
In reality. And when those just keep happening, I think it's so difficult for the club to just sell tickets in general when that keeps happening. And trying to brush yourself off and saying, let's go again. When, yeah, we've got a new manager and, yeah, we've got new owners, but they're not, we've not done like a Wolves and brought in a new philosophy or anything like that. We're kind of on operation continuity, keep everything steady and hope for the best again. And hoping for the best in the Championship is often a route to not doing very well.
I think it'd be interesting, like I've said it off air, Ben said it as well, that if you listen to the first show of the last season and you get our feel for it then, and I think they signed a Luku for a lot of money, and I think most of us would have been upbeat. 3rd in the league.
Yeah, no, I totally was.
Apart from losing Williams, I was a bit disappointed with. We pretty didn't lose anyone. We brought in a player for a lot of money, and I think we're also upbeat about it. So let's err on the side of caution. We haven't done a lot at the moment. We might lose our best player. So if anyone's out there that can put a positive spin on that, then great, let us know, because I don't see one at the moment.
I think the most important person by a considerable distance is Paul Clement. If you can manage that team to have a solid defence and be a little bit adventurous in attack and win games 1-0 like you did last season, then we're going to be fine.
Exactly.
If we can't do that, and the whole entertaining versus boring debate we have with Stam is kind of out the window now, or certainly as I see at the moment, if we're going to overexert ourselves or be lacking in confidence or something, then we're really in trouble. So it's about Paul Clement, I think, and he needs time because he's only done about 8 games.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, we can't forget that. We're talking as if he's been in for ages.
Yeah,
and it's fallen apart with him, but it was there before he got here, wasn't it?
Yes,
so.
And he still hasn't had the opportunity to bring in players that I think he would want. Do you know what I mean?
No.
He hasn't had the chance to overhaul the squad. He's basically, like we said, bought players that are squad players.
That you can find, basically.
Yeah, but Baldock come in, 30 goals, happy days.
Yeah, sell Liam Moore for 10 million quid, and then we can sign, Tommy Elphick for 2, and then, splash a little bit more. Who knows what can happen? But ultimately, Derby is where it all begins. On Sky Sports, for those of you with the luxury, down the pub or whatnot on Friday night. Nice and easy. Go into that with low expectations, and then nothing can upset us. And I'm sure when we reconvene for the next podcast next Monday, nothing will have upset us.
I hope not.
And on that note, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. We hope to accompany you for the season ahead of us, and hopefully it will be just as enjoyable as all those favourite ones we've had in the past, just not like last season. Come on, you Ars.
You smile, funny how the crimes always leave a trail, even when a team is on your tail. Funny how they always leave a trail. You smile, why do you sit on this side of the tree? Please tell me why don't you break this old biscuit for me? Just as